Yesterday afternoon, December 4th, a body was discovered in rural Clay County. At this time, we believed it to be the body of Sydney Loofe.
Every day, millions of individuals use dating applications like Tinder in an effort to find love and have fun. Now, some of these dates go horribly wrong, which is to be anticipated in a chaotic environment. However, what would happen if one of these dates turned into a sexually obsessed cult whose leader went by the moniker Vampire Sugar Daddy? The case details get increasingly strange as time goes on, including horrifying surveillance footage, self-made movies made while avoiding the law, and even a cult involved. However, what precisely transpired with Sydney Loofe, and who was accountable for her abduction? On August 21st, 1993, Sydney Irene Loofe was born in Broken Bow, Nebraska. Born and raised in Arcadia, George W. and Susie Loofe, Sydney moved to Neely with her family in the year 2000. She was acknowledged for her skill at fishing. During her school years, she played basketball and golf, but her participation in sports was limited because she got scoliosis as a teenager. After graduating from Neely Oakdale High School in 2011, she secured a job at a Menards shop nearby. Sydney Loofe, 24, was scheduled to start work as a cashier at Menards in Lincoln, Nebraska on Thursday, November 16, 2017. She neglected to notify anyone of her absence, though, and she never showed up for her shift. Her friends, relatives, and co-workers tried calling and texting her out of concern, but they got no response. When Sydney was in second grade, her family moved to Neely. Her father, George, was a school administrator, and her mother, Susie, was a special education teacher. They remained close, and even after Sydney transferred to the Lincoln branch of Menards from the Norfolk location, they made an effort to stay in touch, frequently getting together for dinner. Sydney went home often. On the weekend of November 10th, for example, Susie drove her back to Lincoln after supper. Sydney sought assistance from a new doctor who recommended a different prescription after she was struggling with depression and found her previous medication to be useless. Susie noticed Sydney's mood improving during the course of the week of November 13th, and she voiced a desire for change, which included looking for a new employment. Nevertheless, despite Sydney's upbeat attitude lately, worries grew when she failed to show up for work, and her co-workers informed her family. When Sydney's parents arrived to her duplex apartment, Sydney was gone, but her cherished cat, Mimsy, was there. Susie's anxiety increased right away since she knew Sydney wouldn't abandon her cat without food or water for a long time. Fearing the worst, they filed a missing persons complaint with the police. Earlier, at her co-worker's request, the police had checked on Sydney. Sydney's car was parked outside the apartment, and the apartment was locked, even though nothing seemed wrong inside the flat, other than that Mimsy didn't have any water. This indicated that she hadn't just gone for a quick peek. Sydney's family was certain that something was amiss, and the police took their suspicions seriously, even though there were no obvious indicators of foul activity. Susie reported to the police that she thought her daughter had gone out on a date that November 15th evening. She shared an image of a Snapchat post that Sydney had shared, saying, "Ready for my date?" It included a picture of herself. Sydney's pals confirmed that she was meeting up with Audrey, a person she had connected with on Tinder, as per their confirmation. After examining Sydney's phone logs and the security footage from her place of employment, the police discovered someone they had to talk to immediately. The last time Sydney's phone rang was near a flat owned by a woman called Bailey Boswell in the Wilbur neighborhood. Based on her online persona as Audrey, investigators surmised that Sydney had met Bailey, a 26-year-old, on November 15th. Bailey told the authorities that she had gone on 2 dates with Sydney, the second one taking place on November 15th, the night before Sydney was reported missing. Bailey said that she didn't know where Sydney was and hadn't heard from her since. Bailey and her 52-year-old lover, Aubrey Trail, absconded before the police could continue additional talks with her. Bailey and her boyfriend Aubrey Trail posted videos on Facebook while avoiding capture, claiming their innocence in Sydney's disappearance and wishing for her safe return. Sydney was supposedly taken on 2 dates by Bailey, who claimed to have dropped her off at a friend's house and not heard from Sydney again. In one video, she expressed her regret to Sydney's family, denied any role in her disappearance, wished for a speedy recovery, and called Sydney a lovely person. The authorities eventually found Bailey and Aubrey Trail in a hotel in Branson, Missouri, after pursuing them for many days. They made an effort to escape, but law enforcement was able to capture them. Tragically, the authorities found Sydney's remains following a thorough examination of Bailey's phone and location records, weeks after Sydney was reported missing. Her body was shockingly dissected. Her bones were split into 14 pieces and disposed of in ditches all around Clay County in black plastic rubbish bags. Interestingly, Sydney was missing a few organs, including her heart. Charges of first-degree murder, inappropriate handling of human remains, and murderous conspiracy were brought against Bailey and Aubrey. After that, he said, they lost touch. But in November 2017, Bailey tried to rekindle their romance by getting in touch with Sydney. Aubrey claimed that Sydney was at Menards on November 15th because he had agreed to meet him because he needed money. Sydney allegedly received a $5,000 offer from Aubrey to join their antique stealing ring. Later that night, the three of them had sex, and it was during one of their games that Sydney unintentionally asphyxiated herself with an extension cord. I don't know if Sydney had a seizure or what, but that's when her respiration stopped, Aubrey said. He told the court that the mutilation of Sydney's body had nothing to do with ceremony and refuted any beliefs about vampires, witchcraft, or bloodletting. He clarified that because her corpse wouldn't fit in the car, he had to dismember her. When asked what kind of tool he was using, he said it was something like a hacksaw blade that was curved. After confessing to being scared, Aubrey threw away her body at dawn on November 16th in a field in Clay County. He gave the excuse that he didn't think anyone would accept his story of an accidental death to justify not asking for help. Although Aubrey admitted to throwing Sydney's body away, she insisted that her death was an unintentional result of using an extension cable for intercourse. Bailey fiercely denied any role in the events during her trial. Rather, her attorneys contended that she was a defenseless young lady when she first encountered Aubrey, highlighting her remote residence and recent separation from an abusive partnership with her child's father while working as a waiter in Princeton, Missouri. Bailey was not involved in Sydney's death or the disposal of her body, the defense insisted vehemently. The prosecution, however, refuted this assertion and offered proof that refuted Bailey's innocence. They emphasized how close a smartphone connected to Bailey's Tinder account was to the site where Sydney's body was found. Law authorities eventually found Sydney's remains thanks to a thorough examination of Bailey's phone and location records. The court was also informed that Bailey was the one who set up the meeting and made the first contact with Sydney. On the evening of November 15th, she was the one who showed up at Sydney's duplex to pick her up. The jury heard testimony from 3 other women who had dated Aubrey and Bailey at various points in their lives and who had all met on Tinder. In their testimony, they said that Bailey had messaged them on Tinder and had gotten into sexual relations with both Aubrey and Bailey. After their Tinder encounter, one woman claimed that she even went on a trip with them. She said Aubrey persuaded her to join what he called his cult and gave her a weekly payment of $1,200. He called the group's members witches and told her that in order to join, she would have to take part in murder and torture. He went so far as to propose possible victims, one of which being a woman they had met on Tinder. In her testimony, she said that among the gang, Bailey was known as the Queen Witch. According to testimony from another woman, Bailey expressed pleasure in discussing torture and had a frequent desire to break fingers and be fascinated with body dismemberment. The 3 ladies who gave testimony all stressed how avidly Bailey and Aubrey discussed torture and murder. In addition, the court was told that Bailey was with Aubrey the day Sydney was slain, and that day they went to Home Depot together and bought a hacksaw, tin snips, and a utility knife. That day, about midday, Bailey texted Sydney to ask how her day was going. Bailey was with Aubrey in the Menards parking lot when Aubrey sent the Tinder message, as verified by phone records and security cameras. Even though Sydney worked at Menards, there was no sign that she knew Bailey was there. Bailey notified Sydney via another Tinder message a few hours later that she was on her way to her flat to pick her up. Phone records indicate that Sydney and Aubrey may have gone to Bailey and Bailey's flat rather than Sydney's assumption that they would drive about on their date. Bailey's lawyer said that Bailey may have been guilty of aiding and abetting the unlawful disposal of human remains because the evidence showed that she had bought bleach and trash bags for Aubrey to use when disposing of Sydney's body. He did, however, ask the jury to deliberate on whether or not this evidence was enough to prove first-degree murder or murderous conspiracy. He pleaded with the jury to ignore the gory autopsy images and focus only on the evidence that was given. After just a few hours of deliberation, the jury found Aubrey Trail guilty of first-degree murder, murderous conspiracy, and unlawful disposal of human skeletal remains. The judge rejected Trail's request for a fresh trial. However, Bailey Boswell was successful in her request to switch the location, which was approved on the grounds of prejudice. However, the district judge withdrew from the case in February 2020 because she was involved in the execution of Nebraska's execution protocol. Bailey Boswell was convicted by a jury in October 2020 of first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and inappropriate disposal of human remains. Subsequently, in June 2021, a trio of judges reached a unanimous decision to execute Aubrey Trail. Trail made an effort to represent himself throughout the appeals procedure, but his application was turned down. In the meantime, one of the three judges declared that Boswell's acts fell short of the standard of extreme depravity necessary to carry out the death penalty, and she was given a life sentence. How does today's story strike you? In the comments section, share your thoughts on this case. Thank you for watching, and to ensure that you don't miss the daily releases of new videos, I suggest you subscribe to the channel and click the bell. Look after your loved ones and yourself. I'll see you shortly.